All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight for the Child Neurology Foundation's 2021 Patient Advocacy Summit. My name is Katie Henches and I'm the Director of Programs for the Child Neurology Foundation. This is our inaugural Transition of Care Patient Advocacy Summit, and we believe that the patient voice and experience is an integral part of a successful transition from pediatric to adult care. This summit focuses on centering those voices and experiences, ensuring that these young adults and those who support them have the knowledge and tools to be able to make the process successful for all involved. The Child Neurology Foundation has resources in the transition of care space, including a toolkit for young adults and their caregivers to begin and encourage the many discussions required for a successful transition. These are available in English and Spanish, and we will be sharing the links in the chat. These resources and our summit would be impossible without our partners. We're able to put on summits like this for free today, thanks to generous support from our transition of care partners, Acadia, Biogen, Eisai, Genentech, Greenwich, and Zogenix. Thank you so much. We also hope that if this session resonates with you and you find it helpful in advocating for yourself, and if you're able to make a donation to the Child Neurology Foundation. It's extremely helpful in helping us continue our efforts to provide this first-class programming and education. Even a small amount is helpful. So if you're interested in contributing, we will drop a link in the chat for you to access. All right, so for our panel tonight, it's entitled Using Social Media to Build Community and Advocate for Better Care as a Young Adult. And we're really thrilled to have three esteemed panelists join us. Keisha Graves lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and holds a bachelor's in fashion design and marketing and a master's degree in business management. She works as a merchandise coordinator. Keisha was diagnosed with limb-girdle muscular dystrophy when she was 24, and through that experience founded Girls Chronically Rock, a fashion line designed for girls with disabilities. She's 2021's Muscular Dystrophy Association's National Ambassador. Erin Nowakowski is a 19-year-old living with spinal muscular atrophy in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. They are a second-year student at the University of Calgary taking a BA in political science. Erin is passionate about human rights, political action, and disability justice. They are a freelance writer and social media editor for Cripple magazine, and their writing has been featured in both local and international publications. Jen Roman is a young adult who's been impacted by idiopathic intracranial hypertension since 2016. Jen has become an advocate and expert in her condition and the technology that keeps her alive. Jen reports that social media allowed her to become engaged with a community that welcomed her and encouraged her after feeling immense isolation and an inability to connect. Before we get into their comments, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping things. This panel is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all registrants in the password protected hub that we will be placing in the chat. We will also send this later on. Please remain muted while panelists are speaking, but there will be designated time at the end if you wish for you to unmute yourself and ask questions. Please indicate that you have a question in the designated time at the end of the event by using the raise hand button under the reaction section. You're also welcome to ask questions or provide comments at any time via the chat using that feature. If you feel comfortable doing so, we encourage you to have your video on during this event, but we understand if your background is busy or you don't feel comfortable, feel free to turn it off. Our moderator for this panel is Shay Lannon. Shay is a dual enrolled honors high school student originally from New York City. She's interested in political science with a focus on international law and is an advocate for women's rights and issues that affect African American people. She also lives with epilepsy. So with all of that, I would love to turn it over to Shay.
Thank you so much, Katie, for the handover and beautiful introductions. Hello, everyone. My name is Shay, as mentioned before, and I'll be the moderator for our panel tonight. But before we get into it, I'd just like to give a brief introduction. I am a second-year dual enrollment student at Valencia College. And simply a young person using social media to build a brand while figuring out my own path to adulthood. So let's now get into these questions. But let's first start with some introductions, right? So I'd like to ask Ms. Erin to unmute and introduce themselves.
Hello, so my name is Erin. As the introduction said, I am a 19-year-old student. I just finished my second year of university. I'm studying political science as well as English. I have used a power wheelchair my entire life. I have spinal muscular atrophy, which is a neuromuscular condition that affects my muscles. So I have been involved with the disability community my whole life, and I've also been just on the internet my entire life. And that has given me a really amazing place to have a community and sort of start my own little community. Over the last year, I have gotten very involved on TikTok. I have a TikTok account with around 500,000 followers. On there, I tend to make uh, comedy videos, fashion videos, also just videos of me being a 19-year-old and doing whatever I am doing that day. I sort of got involved just by accident. I started making videos for fun, and then some people started to enjoy them. Now I'm just sort of working on it as a way to be a little bit of representation. I know that when I was younger and on social media, I didn't get to see a lot of other disabled people who looked like me or sort of lived lives similar to me. So I just like to, you know, be in people's faces and show up on people's For You pages and be annoying. And that's kind of my little brand that I've built for myself. Other than that, I am also a freelance writer. I write about like disability justice issues, political issues, and then also issues of representation for disabled people in media. Um, yeah, I guess that's most of the important things about me. I just am very appreciative of everything that social media has done for me. It's given me a lot of opportunities, and it's also been a way for me to connect with a lot of really great people.
Thank you so much. And that is exactly what this panel is going to be exploring today, spanning from representation to just personal growth, to expanding your own brand, to expanding connection. So we thank you for being here today. Keisha, let's hear your introduction.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Keisha Graves. I am from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I live with limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. So I'm in the same group as Erin, muscular dystrophy family, but I have limb-girdle, which affects pretty much my whole entire body. I was diagnosed with it in my early 20s when I was actually in graduate school receiving my master's degree. So yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere, but I always had a passion for fashion. As they said, I went to school for fashion design and merchandising. So in 2017, I started Girls Chronically Rock, which is a clothing brand, a t-shirt brand that I started to help create to inspire and motivate others in the disability community. Because we all just need that inspiration here and there with like those inspirational quotes and things like that to just make us feel good. Because only we know what that feels like on a daily basis. And recently, I launched my adaptive swimwear line for people with disabilities to make it more accessible and adaptive for people like ourselves, so we can go to aquatic therapy, go on vacation, and have that easy access to take it, to make it easier to take on and off our bathing suits. Like we still like to go out and have fun too, just like everybody else. But I would say I mostly spend most of my time on Instagram, but I'm trying to get more like on Erin's level to be more on TikTok. I like it mostly now just for mostly watching the funny videos. It honestly keeps me sane. If I have a bad day, going on TikTok honestly makes me happy. But I want to get more into, I feel like I need a tutorial to make like those funny videos because I feel like it would be good just to bring awareness to the disability community, but also it would be good for the business, Girls Chronically Rock. But yeah, I love social media, Facebook, and love connecting and meeting new people.
Yes, yes, yes. And we absolutely love that slogan, Passion for Fashion.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to hear more about Girls Chronically Rock in today's session. And so now let's hear from Jen.
Hi guys, yes, my name is Jen. I'm from New Jersey, home of Bon Jovi and also the great Bruce Springsteen. Basically, my journey started in 2016. I was working as a firefighter EMT and I went very suddenly and randomly blind. And my mom ended up taking me to the ophthalmologist. And after going to a hospital and then having several spinal taps and a really sweet helicopter ride later, I was diagnosed with idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And so basically what that means is that sometimes I have way too much CSF, so cerebral spinal fluid, and that's what protects and cushions the brain. And unfortunately, when there's too much, you can go into strokes, blindness, all of that good stuff. Through everything that I've encountered, I've ended up having about 10 brain surgeries. And essentially during the time of when I was diagnosed, I went through a lot of these things alone. You know, like I tried to do a lot of the support groups on Facebook, but it was something that didn't really pan out because it didn't really cater to my age group, and I just felt really alienated. And I ended up going on Instagram and messing around with hashtags. And that was kind of how I discovered the rare community. I'd only really known of NORD before. And so that's how I was introduced to our Odyssey, and completely just changed my life overnight. And that's where I'm at today.
That's absolutely beautiful. Talk about a dream, try to make it real, right? So that's absolutely amazing. And so now we'll get into our questions for you all. The first one would be, how did you decide to start sharing your personal story on social media? So we'll start with you, Jen.
Yeah, so I was actually an entertainer before. I'm also I'm actually a professional vocalist. And so I was kind of already used to living a very public life because my manager was always on my case trying to get more people, you know, get more people to the shows, get people in seats. So I was always kind of networking. And so basically from that point, I had started kind of posting about my journey because I'm honestly kind of lazy and sometimes I really don't feel like texting everybody. So I ended up just kind of making these big posts, and that just kind of worked for me. So that was essentially how I started getting more public. And then people started like really actually asking questions and wanting to understand. And as I started having more reach, and especially as I started getting into more of the support groups, there were a lot of people where they weren't getting a lot of their questions answered, and there was a lack of support, especially when it comes to getting that support when you need it. So that was also a huge factor, definitely.
Okay, all right. And whoever would like to take the mic, Aaron or Keisha?
I can go. So for me, like I said, I've been on the internet pretty much my whole life. It's just like how I've grown up, based on my age. But like I said, I didn't really get to see a lot of other people who looked like me, and I always had to go like digging for people who understood me or had similar experiences to me. So I was always just happy to just honestly overshare all the time, and I still do that. It works for me. It entertains people, and it's also just a really good way for me to like not only connect with other people, but just like process everything that I go through. Especially with TikTok, I started going into more detail about like being disabled and you know, facing ableism in everyday society. I just realized that it was a really good way to share with people who would otherwise have no idea about like any of the problems that we face. And in my opinion, like having abled allies is a really important part of our fight, and it's also really important, like in terms of advocating for ourselves. And platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of that, like it helps share your story with people who, like I said, would otherwise just not be aware of any of that type of stuff. So it makes me happy to know that I can maybe educate a few people, maybe give people a couple laughs. And then other than that, I can also connect with other people who are disabled, and sort of just show that like I am there for other disabled people who have similar experiences. And yeah, I guess that's why I started everything.
Oh, perfect. That's beautiful. That's going to be a great segue to our follow-up question. But first, Keisha.
Sure. I would say for me, it was a little different. You know, as I mentioned, I was diagnosed in my early 20s. So that was a lot to process. When that doctor called and told me that day, Keisha, you have muscular dystrophy, I'm like, she had to call the wrong patient. She can't be talking about me. So I was in total denial, like denial, not even telling close family or friends. The only way my family knew was because my mom told them. So it definitely took some time. For me, it was when I first like started to open up. I opened my laptop and just started writing and blogging and venting about the symptoms and how I would repeatedly fall and all the testings I did, like MRI, EKG, muscle biopsy, you name it. And it was like that moment when I started writing, I was like, wow, I have muscular dystrophy. So it's like, never mind what the doctors were saying. Cause like I said, that phone call, I totally ignored it. Cause I'm like, she must have got the test results mixed up with somebody else. So it definitely took some time. And then I love what Jen said earlier with the whole hashtags. Hashtags is definitely a plus. That definitely helped me. Because once I wrote that first blog and I got so much great feedback, and they're like, oh my God, I never even knew you were dealing with that. And I'm like, yeah. And then I just started to open up more and go on like Instagram and you use hashtags like disability awareness, hashtag muscular dystrophy, hashtag chronic illness. And I'm like, hashtags really go a long way. And then that just opened up a whole new world of other people with so many disabilities that I never even heard of. And I'm like, wow, I'm not alone. So that made me feel good. It definitely kind of opened the door a little bit. Now I'm totally open. Like, I like say whatever on social media. But before, it wasn't always like that. Cause I tell people like I was in denial. I wasn't even accepting the fact that I had muscular dystrophy. So I couldn't then go on social media and promote it where I wasn't even accepting the fact that I had it, if that makes sense. But I'm okay and I'm great at a place that I'm at now to kind of express that. And I have the supportive community like you guys in the disability community to talk with because, like I always say, we get it. There's nothing like talking to somebody who gets it and knows what it's like dealing with a chronic illness / disability. So that's kind of my journey with social media, but it definitely has. I met a whole new great set of people and I'm learning each and every day on posting and what people like to see.
Yes, and isn't that something? A common thread with you all healing through humor and hashtags, right? And so our follow-up question from there would be what role does humor play for you in your online identity? Whoever would like to go first.
I'll go for it. Humor, humor has honestly been probably one of the biggest things I've relied on through this entire process because that is my coping mechanism. If I wasn't laughing all the way through all of this, I really don't know what else I would honestly be doing. For me, a lot of my advocacy on Instagram actually comes in the form of memes. Believe it or not, I know. But basically, when it comes to being able to utilize humor to tell your story, not only are you brightening someone else's day, you're giving that relatable content, you're letting someone connect to you on such a deep and personal level. And with me, since it is my coping mechanism, it goes even deeper than that. And you're really getting to see a really personal side of things. And it's neat to put your own little twist on all of it,
Yes, of course. Keisha.
Whoops, I was muted. Yeah, I would say for me, like as I said earlier, like I just love going through TikTok to watch, I think other people videos because that makes me happy. And I tell other people too, like my TV shows and like the TV shows and reality shows I watch honestly keeps me sane. Like people may think you watch shows all the time, but I'm like, that's what keeps me sane. May have a bad day where I had a fall and like, that can put a damper on things. But knowing I have a TV show to watch on my DVR or I'm going on TikTok to watch like other disability influencers, that makes me feel good. So it may not be necessarily of the things I post, but watching others like strive and watch these funny videos, I'm like, that really puts me in a good mood.
I think that's something to look forward to.
Yes.
Aaron.
So a lot of what I post, pretty much all of what I post is meant to be funny. I do like comedy videos. I make wheelchair jokes and I make fun of myself sometimes. I've found that humor, especially on a platform like TikTok, but it really applies to everything, is a really easy way to sort of like very quickly and with not a lot of effort, sort of break people's misconceptions of you and like break some stereotypes. Just because there's so many awful like people who aren't versed in like the disability community or people who don't have a lot of experience with people with disabilities. They can think that we sit around in our room and mope all the time because we're disabled. Those are comments I get all the time on TikTok saying, "Oh, you must be so sad. I feel so bad for you." And again, making jokes about my disability, that's a way to very quickly break that stereotype. There's also stereotypes that like disabled people don't have personalities other than just being disabled. Again, being funny, making a funny video on TikTok, it's a very quick way for that person to go, oh, she's funny, I like that. So I just think it's a really good way to like, obviously I love making people smile and I love making jokes, and it's just like something I've done all the time, but it also kind of like serves a purpose, which I think is just really cool, and like it's very convenient for me.
Yes, and on the flip side of humor, could you tell the viewers about a time you've dealt with trolls or some of the negative sides of social media?
I can start that one. Yeah, so a number of my most viewed videos are videos of me responding to people's not so great comments and just like absolutely ruining them, to be honest with you. Like I said, I'm gonna be honest, I think I'm awfully funny, and quite a number of people agree. One of my recent videos, someone told me I can't do anything, and so I responded with a funny video saying, here's a list of things that I can do and that I do quite frequently. And then I said, your mom. So it's a very specific form of humor, but it got about 1.3 million likes, and it taught a lot of people not to mess with me and other disabled people. So it's a very, I'm very crass, I'm very honest, but yeah, that's like, I just kind of troll them back. It ends up educating them anyway because they know not to do that next time. So it works for me.
Yeah, your mom has to be a classic, most definitely. How about you?
I would say for me, yes, trolls can be, sometimes can be annoying. And tend to sometimes, always not respond in the best way, not like say like the way Erin does it is probably the best proper way. You know what I mean? Or I may say something like, oh, I may regret later on down. So sometimes I realize I like now Instagram has it where you can turn off your comments, but there are some comments where some people's like, oh, well, what do? You just have like a t-shirt business. So I've seen comments like that. And it's kind of like, sometimes they just trolls. You never know what's going on in their lives that, like they say, hurt people hurt other people, that saying. So I just sometimes try to ignore it. I try. It's definitely hard. And, sometimes I am fearful of, because, who knows what's to come in the future. Like, people always have something to say, so it's like, you never know, but I try to ignore it. But I love Erin's response of, doing it in that funny humor way. I'm going to try that once I figure out TikTok.
Can I respond really quickly to something that Keisha said, because it was great? So like you said, like the way that I do it is the best way, which I just want to say, like, I think it's so important that some people just ignore it, and then there's also people who like choose the route of like giving people an educated and like well
Yes.
composed answer. And just the fact that like so many different disabled people have like different ways of going about it, it ends up being like a very perfect mix of like dealing with the trolls. So I
Yeah,
think that like having different styles is super important. And like I
that's true.
appreciate everyone and the way that they like deal with that. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense, but
Yes, it does. Whatever suits you. And I think that would be the question that we direct for Jen.
Well, here I am back with the different styles. What's up? So I'm actually the kind of person where I used to have like really bad anger management. So I tend to try to ignore people for the most part because I can't Hulk smash everybody. Um, so typically I try to stick with the more educational route, especially since a majority of my trolls end up actually being medical professionals. So there's like actually a huge stigma with my condition with idiopathic intracranial hypertension, where it's only something that affects women of childbearing age who are obese. And through all of this, and having been diagnosed as a physically fit firefighter at the time, and having them say, oh, if you just lose 10 pounds, you'll be fine. Like, we've all heard that. We all know it's BS. Like, come on. And, so essentially I would get a lot of doctors who would hear my podcast and they would hear me say, oh, like through this experience, I've discovered that, this is not a condition that discriminates. And they would really challenge that theory. And, like you really need to keep your composure in that, because you have a chance to basically mold the doctors of tomorrow. I mean, some of these are med students. We have this really great opportunity to educate people. And I think that when you're able to both educate and be funny, that's when you're really winning.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I think that would give us yet another segue into our question being, you are all popular on social media, that's just a fact. So how does someone participate in this community without having thousands of followers or their own business? So whoever would like to answer.
I would say, sorry.
Sorry.
You
I
can
would
go.
say, like, because as I mentioned earlier, it was, not easy for me to come on social media and kind of express, oh, I have muscular dystrophy. And I honestly admire people that do that. Like, they could just find out a diagnosis and, promote it, and not like promote it, but go on social media and kind of express themselves and blog. And I'm like, wow, like, I wish I could have done that. But I understand that we all handle and deal with things differently. I would say there's nothing wrong when you don't have followers. I mean, I don't think I have a lot of followers. I'm not even verified on Instagram. So it's like, but I feel like you start off small and, just to have that connection and support in the disability community with using those hashtags and just being a part of that community. I think that's all that matters. It's not about followers, is how I view it. I just more look at, I have that support, because when I first started and opening up, that's when I met all these people and I didn't have any followers. I started off with like 200, 300 followers. And then it just grew as I started to open up more. So I think it just takes time for everybody, and we all handle and deal with things in our own way.
Yes, yes, yes. So what are your thoughts on that, Erin?
So I would say, like everyone else has kind of mentioned, like the hashtag thing, that's something that is so unique to social media, and it really allows you to build a community. And I don't think that like the goal of posting on social media has to be like reaching the biggest audience or like gaining the most followers. I certainly never really intended to like gain followers. It's just sort of something that happened. But even before I ever had like a large platform, I was able to use social media to find like other people, like I said, with similar experiences to me and with other disabilities, and who I could learn from. And I think that that's also really important, especially in regards to like advocating for yourself, even in terms of like transitioning from forms of care and stuff like that. You can learn so much from other people who are on the other end of the world and maybe know something that you don't know yet, and they can like teach you how to better advocate for yourself just through their own experiences. So I think that like being a part of social media, you can like go and find those people, like everyone said, scrolling through hashtags or going through the following list of other people. And that's like just as fulfilling, if not more, and like effective than it is, having thousands of followers. Either way, you're still learning a lot, and you're still finding people who will be there to support you.
Yes, yes, and it's funny how we're all kind of connected back to those support systems. So Jen, did you want to add something?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the most important things to remember is that you just need to show up. You just need to be you, show up. Don't worry about the counts of the followers, like don't really have that in your head, because the thing is like, you're going to end up building your own community. You're going to end up building what you put into it. And I think it's more of the quality versus the quantity. I know everyone's always like, oh, it's the views and all that, but like it really, if you're making a difference in 50 people's lives, and I mean like a profound difference versus just making, oh yeah, a little bit of difference and like, like a certain viral amount or anything, like being able to make that impact is really what it's going to all be about at the end. So if you're really going to, make an impact for those 50 people, that makes all of it worth it.
Yeah, so you hit it on the head, having it be viral versus having an impact. And so that brings us to our next question, being, let's just scratch out followers and shift the focus to simply spreading the message to others, be it on a polar coast or to others on the other side of the world. right? So it seems like there's no clear way to know what will catch on to social media, because we have Charlie D'Amelio, and then we have I hate to even like the smaller creators, because every creator is just profound in their own way. But the question set here is, what are some suggestions that you all would have for a young person on social media who's posting something that just goes unexpectedly viral? So let's ask Erin first.
Sure, I can speak on that. So the only reason I have followers on TikTok is I posted one silly video a year and a half ago, and I woke up and it had 600,000 likes, and I did nothing to make that happen. It's just that TikTok as a platform specifically sort of randomly picks and chooses things to send out. And if a couple people like them, it sends it out to more people, and that's just how it works. There were, of course, a number of comments that were unpleasant to read, especially as I had not like established myself previously, since it was one of my first more viral videos. But I guess I would just like, my advice would be just remember that like you're the one in charge. So anything that you no longer want people to see, like you can get rid of it, you can delete it. Of course, there are, traces of things on the internet, but if you no longer want people to be commenting on it, you can turn off comments. If you no longer want it to be on your account, you can delete it. And the other thing is, like, you might get unsolicited questions or comments, and again, there's a block button. You can get rid of those people. It's not perfect. The internet can be a wild place, but for the most part, you're in charge of what you see on your own page and who engages with it. The other thing is, oh, sorry about that, my phone is ringing. The other thing is, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, the other thing is that if you're really not wanting something to go viral, there's ways to like choose what platform you want to be posting on. So like I said, TikTok is one where you don't always know where it's going to end up. But if you're sharing like for a more closed community or a very niche group of people, places like Instagram or Facebook are really great for that, where you still get to share your story and the people who need to see it will see it. So there's a way to sort of like control that in a way.
Yes. So did you all hear that? You are in charge. Okay. That's a major takeaway from this. Yes. So Jen, did you want to add to that?
I would say it might not be bad to have a contingency plan in place. I know not a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like this is definitely gonna no. Like I know that I'm a very self-depreciating person, so I am not gonna be that person who's like, I'm gonna post this, it's gonna go viral, it's gonna be great. Like no, that's gonna get like 3 views and that's what's gonna happen. But it's not bad to have like a contingency plan on, what do I want to have my username to be in terms of privacy? Like, are there things I can do to protect myself? And on the medical side, if you're gonna be making videos in the hospital, right? If you're getting into like the more privacy aspect of things, that you're blurring out your hospital bracelet, that you're making sure that all of these, like your address, things of that nature, anything that someone can get their hands on and do not so nice things with, we might want to get rid of. So I would definitely say that.
And Keisha, how about you?
I would say I agree with both Erin and Jen on what they're saying. I would say, who someone young wanted to express themselves, I would say just be unapologetically you. Just want to express yourself, because like I say, I admire that when someone like, so openly and express themselves of, after, being diagnosed with something, but, do you and just kind of like, have the different platforms. I mean, now we have Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. I mean, when I was in college, like Facebook just came out. So it's like there's so many platforms that I have to use myself. But yeah, with this younger generation, I mean, I think they can take the cake with that and just they will probably teach me on how to do so certain social medias. But yeah, I would just say do you and express yourself. And like they say, you can always turn off comments and just be careful because there could be some creeps out there too and sliding sending you weird messages. I know I have gotten some of those and just block them. Blocking is just gives me life. So just go ahead and do that, but just do you and yeah, express yourself because I love to see it.
Yes. With all these new features, niches, and comments and likes, there comes the concern with privacy. So Are you all ever worried about that when you share your personal information or talk about your medical status? And the second part to that is for someone newer on social media, what are some things that they should look out for? And you mentioned that, Keisha. So those messages, those different accounts, spam accounts that are out on these apps, networking apps. So what are these things that someone newer on social media should look out for? And what are some ways that they can just protect themselves on these apps? So I'll hand it first over to Keisha, because you were just talking about
Oh, yeah, I would say for me, because I sometimes, would just get random requests, especially on Facebook. And I definitely like to check out their page first, maybe like make sure they're a real person, see if you have any mutual friends, although sometimes the mutual friends, sometimes Facebook does like some wacky stuff where it says you have mutual friends, but you really don't even have these much friends in common. So just be careful of that and aware. But I know this younger generation is mostly on TikTok and Snapchat and things like that. But just to definitely be aware, like when someone, I know it's hard to keep up when you get so many followers, but just kind of, look at that, make sure you know who's watching you, because you just kind of never know. And it's so scary now in this world where they listen to everything we say. If we say one thing, then the shoes pop up on, my Instagram, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll buy these. So it's like they're listening. So just kind of, be careful, make sure who's following you. But yeah, that block button is always there. The settings to, turn off comments. And I think someone in the comments said you can make your TikTok even private, same as, Instagram as well. So I think it took me some time. I used to have my page private, but now that I'm kind of more like, sharing my brand, want to promote my business, and now I'm more open with sharing my stories. I have it more public. So of course that did take a lot to get used to, because I always been such a private person, but I think I've gotten used to it. And I think I don't really post like every day, because sometimes I'm like, I really just can be exhausted and I'm tired. I'm like, I admire, I was like, I'll sit back and watch others post and be entertained. But some days I honestly can be tired and don't post. But I just take it day by day. But I definitely like to observe and watch, because like I said, there some weirdos out there.
Yes, take some time to look at those accounts. And
Hmm.
Erin or Jen, what are your thoughts?
So I would definitely like back off of what I said before. I would also add, if you're going to post about things on Instagram and you're in the hospital and you're raising awareness, do not say what hospital you are at. I cannot stress this enough. Never give away and too much about your location, because I know for me, I've had people call the hospital and I didn't know them. I'd have people try to visit me where I didn't even know who they were. And it definitely caused a lot of safety issues, because like this is like back when I was also on like dating apps and stuff too, so be careful with that as well, because like that is another part of it, because a lot of times you'll have your social media connected, that way people can kind of get like a better idea about you, and if you have things on there, it's there for life. They're going to be able to kind of go back and go through and see it. So I would really be mindful about giving out too much information in terms of location.
Okay, so being wary of those location services. Because I know it's so convenient to just slide that button and say, no, it's fine. I just want them to know my location. Just be mindful. So Erin, what are your thoughts?
I would just say, like, remember that you're allowed to have boundaries, and like whenever someone crosses them, you don't need to be made uncomfortable or like feel that you need to share more than what you want to share. So for example, like on my TikTok, I don't talk about like my specific, illnesses or what's going on like with my body at all times, just because like the form of advocacy that I personally do, like it's not really necessary for me. People ask all the time, they ask, what disability do you have, what medical condition, whatever, and I'm not secretive about it, but I just don't really, like, it's not necessary for me to share, and I don't always feel compelled to share it. The other thing is, like, with like private messages, I love that I'm able to connect with other people who have similar experiences, or people a little bit younger than me who have questions. And I'm always very careful, if you are building like a platform for yourself, it's just important to remember, like, you're not like best friends with everyone, and they're not like entitled to a lot of your medical information. And if you feel like you want to help them and sort of give them some more details, then that's great. But just be cautious with it, and remember that at any time you can sort of just be like, I don't want to share anymore. That's as much as I'm comfortable sharing. Yeah, I guess that's my main, that's how I keep myself in check and make sure that I'm like respecting my own boundaries. And then I just wanted to comment, someone in the chat mentioned how like it's so sad that there's going to be hateful people in comments. And this is true. There's always going to be someone who doesn't like what you're doing. But the other thing I found with social media is like your community, a lot of the times they're going to back you up, and that like love that they're going to send you is going to be so much more powerful than like some stranger who didn't like what you posted. And a lot of times like Keisha said, some days you're just tired and you don't want to deal with that anymore. That's when my community steps in, and like a lot of them will like educate that person or get them to like not be an awful person in my comments. And that's just like a really beautiful thing that I kind of wanted to like highlight because it reminded me of that.
And that is a beautiful thing. And that would bring us to our next question, simply being, what are some ways that you found those communities online?
I guess I'll go. So actually, so when I first started out with NORD, I mean, everyone, when you research your condition for the first time, if you have a rare condition, usually NORD is the page that pops up because they literally have a full anthology of every condition you can possibly think of. And when I started advocating with them, I was actually introduced to Seth Rotberg and Anna Laurent at our Odyssey. And from there, my life kind of changed overnight. So a little bit about our Odyssey, right? This is a group that provides year-round emotional and social support with the hopes of being able to improve the quality of life of young adults with rare and chronic conditions. When I say young adults, I mean 18 to 35, right? And through getting to be with our Odyssey, it's just been incredible getting to go to meetups. Now, they were doing meetups in person prior to COVID-19, but we've actually switched into virtual meetups, and it's been great to be able just to be around people in the same age limit, because I feel like sometimes like disability tends to impact you differently based upon age. And I feel like when I was on, for instance, like the Facebook groups, there were a lot of people who be like, oh, well, you're young, so it's not as bad. And it's like, no, like it's still the same. It still sucks. Like nothing changed, you know? So being able to be in our Odyssey and be around people like me who were feeling all of the same insecurities and problems that I was having, like, that just opened up an entire world for me, and it gave me a brand new sense of confidence and really let me feel like I belonged to a family, because it wasn't a support group, it's a family. And that's been honestly the greatest part of it all.
Wonderful. Yes, finding, not only having a support group, but finding that to be a family. That's awesome. So now let's hear from Keisha.
Sure. I would say for me, once I started to open up my shell, because like I said, I was in so much denial, where there's people that they did recommend to me, oh, Keisha, why don't you see if there's any support groups on Facebook or reach out to the MDA? And my mindset was so off then, because I'm like, why would I join a support groups if I don't have muscular dystrophy? It's like that. My mindset was totally like, I don't have it, so how can I join a support group? Once I finally did, I think that's when the hashtags definitely come in on Instagram, where I met like a whole new range of other people. And then I started Googling the different muscular dystrophy support groups on Facebook, living with limb girdle muscular dystrophy, because I'm like, well, hey, these people are gonna get it. They understand what it's like living with this muscle disease every day. So I totally, that's just made me feel at ease, because I'm like, I'm not alone. I have others out there and I have that support. So definitely social media, I'm using the hashtags and Google and support groups. And then I finally did make that phone call, I remember back then, and reached out to the Muscular Dystrophy Association office here in Massachusetts, and kind of like, hey, do you guys have support groups? Like, I want to talk and meet with others like myself. And, that's kind of when, I got involved with the MDA. And then I also can back up Jen with, our Odyssey, because I met Seth, online, and, he's awesome. And I love that they have that group. And hopefully that maybe we can, get together and I'll meet in person. Cause, like Jen said, it's like, with young adults, I feel like with some organizations like MDA, they may focus on the kids, but I'm like, we're out here too, the, young adults generation to navigate, through dating, going through school. And, it's just nice to have that support with the young adults. We can get together, have a drink and have support. So I think that's awesome. And like I said, I continue to say, I'm glad that I found these different communities because they made me feel better.
Yes, and now we'd like to just explore how finding those support systems can motivate or encourage someone to get involved in advocacy. So we'd like to hear from you all as to how you have used social media to get involved in advocacy. So whoever would like to go first.
Actually, with our Odyssey, we actually have a lot of integrated meetups, one of which being with YAR and through RDLA. So really, they take on a lot of the legislative aspects, and that kind of left me open to Rare Across America and Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill, and which are two really great experiences. I highly recommend doing either one of them. With me, I was able to end up using Twitter and Instagram as a backup in all of that, to communicate with my congressman and get him to, join Rare Disease Congressional Caucus and all these things that are so important to us, and the STAT Act, all of these things. So I really think that that's really one of the important things to hit on, is that you can actually, in a lot of these communities, find connections to more of the legislative advocacy, which has been such an important part for me.
Yes, most definitely. And this is a great time to actually include a question from our audience, Miss Elaine. And her question is, I believe, any advice on how to build something that teens and young adults would want to be part of because it meets them where they're at in regards to transitions of care?
I would say be honest and be relatable. That's the best thing you can possibly do. As long as you are being yourself and you are kind of having that really unique sense of self and that confidence, like they'll love it. I mean, anything where you could also put in some K-pop. Kids love BTS. I'm hip with the kids. I would definitely recommend boy bands. They love the boy bands.
One Direction too old or no?
No. Look, I was on the MySpace era, so
okay.
Look, I was there for that.
I was like, oh, not too old. Okay. And Erin or Keisha, what are your thoughts?
I can go. So I guess for me, being involved in formal organizations, a lot of them didn't use social media, in my opinion, to their full advantage. And I guess if you're trying to build something that is specifically for teens, I would just say to get some teens involved in the planning and make sure that it's a space where they actually want to be. A lot of times, especially, I mean, I'm in Canada, so I don't have the same, I don't know of all the same organizations that you guys are talking about, but I've been involved with Muscular Dystrophy Canada, which is a very similar organization to MDA. And a lot of the events are either catered to children or adults. And there's a very awkward space in between where anyone who is not 4 years old and wants to get their face painted, or over 30 and wants to chat about policy or whatever, there's not a lot for you to do, and you just end up becoming unengaged with whatever's happening. So if you're trying to build something that's 14, I would just say make sure that you have some people of that age range involved. Yeah.
Yeah, and Linda, that's a foundational stuff. I saw her comment on Florida and the governor's bill for RDAC. So that's amazing to know about. And Keisha, let's hear from you. And then we have, I think, one question where Dr. Nick ran.
Yeah, probably. I mean, unfortunately, this is only an hour. I feel like we could keep talking for days here, right? But yeah, probably I would say maybe just one or two more after this before we got to kick it back to Katie. Thanks,
Okay.
Shay.
Yes, of course.
I would say for me, with the young generation, because like I said, they're on a whole new different level today. I think they probably can have more advocacy and, kind of get their voices heard, and definitely to get others involved, and, kind of want all of your voices to be heard, and kind of maybe even do a survey or do a question on whatever social media they platform, hey, I want to get this team group together. What would you guys like to do? A or B, or kind of do a multiple choice, because I think that's so important to get a survey, so you can kind of have that data to say, hey, people want this. This is something that's in need. So I'll definitely say come together, with your age group, and let your voices be heard. Figure out a plan and, do that survey. What do you guys want to see in a support group? What is the age bracket that you want to cut off? And I think that all that would actually really help. and then they can get things running.
Yeah, nothing
Can
about
I-
us.
Sorry, can I piggyback off that really quick? Because there is one thing really important I thought of. I've noticed that in a lot of the bigger patient organizations, a lot of the events that are geared towards young adults aren't led by young adults. And that's something that honestly has been such a bit of a turnoff for a lot of the young adult community, because we want to hear things from people our age. We want to hear things from their perspective. We want to know their stories. We want to know how they cope. So honestly, I feel like if you really, really want to get more young adults out here, have young adults actually giving these events. That would be so great.
Right. It would only make sense, right?
Exactly.
Sure.
And so our last question would be, are there ways to use social media to help find a neurologist?
Ooh. So you said easy to find a neurologist?
Yeah, so one question that we saw in the chat is if there are ways people can utilize social media to help them find a neurologist.
I have a way.
Yeah, I would say, well, again, with my support groups, I definitely love Google. And also I love that although I would see one neurologist, I must say they always, when I was first diagnosed, my first neurologist then referred me to the guy who trained her at Mass General Hospital. And I appreciate that. She was like, go get a second opinion, get his advice. And then as time went on, because I'm the type, I like to hear different people's opinions and like to hear what everyone has to say. So right now I see like 3 different neurologists, one at Brigham and Women's, one at CHA, and one at Mass General Hospital. So I like to hear what they all have to say. What if one comes up with a treatment that the other one doesn't? So I'm like, hey, let me hear what everybody has to say. But I definitely use my Google resources. And then the other people that I've met through support groups that have MD, I also ask them like, hey, who do you go to see? Where do you see your neurologist at? And then hear their perspective. And then I kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Jen, I thought you were about to say something.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, one of the best places where if you really want to get a vibe for who your neurologist or your neurosurgeon, what they are like, I actually found a lot of my neurosurgeon's content on YouTube because he gave so many seminars, and I actually got to watch him do an endoscopic third ventriculostomy, which was really, really cool. And after being able to see the way he was in the operating room, that made me feel a lot more confident in who I chose. I mean, obviously I've had 10 procedures and I'm still here. We're good. So I think he's pretty great. But yeah, you can also go on YouTube. Like a lot of times people don't realize what all is actually on YouTube. Like you think it's all just, beauty influencers and drama alert and all that. But, there's actually a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the medical community and being able to really find your doctors.
Yeah, so it doesn't stop at Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Look a little further. And Erin, did you want to add anything before we conclude or pass?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, literally the other day, someone messaged me. They don't live in the same city as me, but they often come into the city for their appointments, and they literally just asked me what neurologist I see, and I was able to give them a list of people I had seen, people who I liked, and people who I had not liked, or people who I have close friends who they didn't, love them when they saw them. So just being able to find that community, if you're lucky enough to find people who are sort of near you, you can just share your experiences, and it helps to find someone that you're sort of more comfortable going to see.
Yep, comfortability and support. And so with that, I'll now yield the rest of our time back to Katie. But thank you so much for your replies.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are at the end of our hour. Thank you to Shay and to our panelists, Keisha, Erin, and Jen. On behalf of CNF and our communities, we're so grateful you have shared with us your time and expertise in these areas, and we look forward to implementing what we learned. As a reminder, CNF and our partners have transitions of care resources available in our password protected hub. It's been shared in the chat. You've been getting a lot of emails, and you'll get a lot of emails next week, so it'll be included in there too. But also you'll be getting an email with a survey about this event. Please fill it out. We would love to hear your feedback and better understand how we can curate content for you in the future. We'd also like to say thank you to our partners, Acadia, Biogen, Eisai, Genentech, Greenwich, and Zogenix. And again, if you enjoyed our programming, please feel free to donate. There's a link in the chat. And there's plenty more summit to attend. Please join us on Monday, June 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern for our upcoming talk, Racism, Discrimination, and Other Adverse Childhood Events and Their Long-Term Effects on Healthcare Outcomes and Care. So thank you again for joining us tonight and have a wonderful weekend.